App was one of the most respected battle rappers in Philly before he was indicted for drug trafficking and sentenced to 45 years in prison. The crazy thing about his whole story is how police use his own lyrics in interviews and put him behind bars. Let's get into the come up and career of App, the king of Philly. App grew up in North Philadelphia, one of the worst areas in the city. His upbringing was pretty different from most rappers since he grew up in a religious household with strict parents, but he was still surrounded by crime and poverty and quickly adapted to his environment. Around 14 or 15, he started getting sucked into the streets, and nothing his parents could do could stop him from going down the wrong path. He left home at 16 because he was sick of all the rules he had to follow while living under his parents' roof. He left regular school and switched to a jobs program and got his plumber's license, which allowed him to start working at just 16. At first, he was just working a minimum wage job, barely bringing in $200 a week, but one of his younger cousins was already in the streets selling drugs. He offered App $500 to sell weed for him a couple days a week, which was twice as much than he was making as a plumber. So he left his plumbing job and jumped headfirst into the dope game, leveling up from weed to crack. His brother saw him making moves and followed suit. They teamed up and started running the block together, but they also got in trouble with the law and spent the next few years in and out of jail. But that didn't stop his hustle, and he quickly became one of the biggest drug dealers in North Philly. At his peak, his block was making around 10 bands a day. He was always a big dude, so at 17, he was willing to fight anyone, even the older dudes in the neighborhood. Plus, he had younger cousins and friends who were shooters, so he knew he was good. He was cool with the dude who originally ran the block, so he was always able to do his thing. But one day, that guy got killed, leaving a void in the neighborhood. App quickly filled that void, but he brought in a plug from a different hood. The plug had access to all the right products, but he didn't want to be in the game anymore because his pops and his brother had just got killed. So App took over his operation and brought it into his own hood. But this caused tension with other dudes in his hood because he brought in an outsider. This led to a bloody war, which landed App in jail for violent crimes, not just drugs. But by 18 or 19, he already had 5 whips, a 2-bedroom house, and was able to pay his mama's bills. So, to him, all the money he was making was worth the brief stints in jail. But along the way, he started taking an interest in music and got involved in battle rap. This attracted the attention of one of the biggest rappers in Philly, Cassidy, who invited App to join his label, Larceny Family. But before his career really took off, both rappers got involved in a murder case that almost cost them their freedom. On April 15, 2005, 3 men, including Cassidy, allegedly fired at 3 other dudes with pistols and AK-47 during an argument in the West Oak Lane hood of Philly. One of the men, Desmond Hawkins, was shot in the back and died from his injuries. Hawkins and 2 friends also got shot but survived. A few weeks later, a warrant was issued for Cassidy's arrest on charges of murder, attempted murder, reckless endangerment, aggravated assault, conspiracy, and weapons possession. App was also identified as one of the men who assisted Cassidy in the shooting and got arrested as an accomplice. According to App, some of his own homies snitched on him and said that he and Cassidy was involved in the shooting. Cassidy was facing life in prison and the possibility of the death penalty. App was facing a similar sentence, so it was looking all bad for him. But at the last minute, the case took a turn when the primary witness withdrew his confession. They still tried charging Cassidy with 3rd-degree murder, but they eventually dropped it down to involuntary manslaughter along with attempted murder and weapons charges. So, he only got sentenced for 11 to 23 months with time served, and he was released on March 2nd, 2006. App spent about 2 years fighting the case, but was eventually found not guilty. Once they was both cleared of the charges, they got right back to the music grind. App started appearing as a featured artist on Cassidy's mixtapes throughout 2007, including 070707 Happy Birthday and Put Your L in the Sky. The following year, he dropped his own debut mixtape, Welcome to the Trap Street, which helped build a buzz in the city. The same year, he and Cassidy appeared on the Cocaine City Street DVD, where they collaborated with a young French Montana on the song City of Dreams. Then, he continued to capitalize off his buzz and dropped back-to-back mixtapes, I See Dead People and Allegheny AB. In 2010, he founded the Original Block Hustlers, a rap group and record label, along with fellow rapper Dark Low. The crew was around for years in the streets already, but he decided to rebrand it as a music group and team up with his younger brother, Leak Moss, who was also a rapper. Some of the founding members of OBH snitched on App and Cassidy in the Desmond Hawkins case, and now most of them are serving life in prison on separate murder charges. So, App was learning to take a street mentality and apply it to the music, but he still had 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the drug game. Around this time, he also started beefing with his former mentor, Cassidy, claiming that the only reason Cass put him on was because he was being extorted and needed protection. They patched it up years later, but in the meantime, he did his own thing. Even though he was making waves in the music industry, he was still a hustler at heart and continued making moves in the streets. That later led him to getting shot multiple times before ending up in prison on a drug charge. In 2011, App got shot a total of 13 times on 2 separate occasions. The first time, he got shot 3 times and made a quick recovery. But a few months later, he got shot again and was hit a total of 10 times. He was selling someone some crack in the Kensington neighborhood. He made the drop, then got back in the car with his cousin and the dude who plugged him in with the buyer. Ab was driving, but he was drinking Ciroc and high off perks and lean, so he wasn't paying attention to his surroundings as much as he should have been. As they was driving, someone pulled up alongside the car and started letting off shots. At first, he thought it was the dude in the backseat who pulled the trigger, but then he looked over and realized that it was someone in another vehicle next to him. He looked down and realized he got hit, so he drove himself to the hospital. He was hit 10 times and tweeted a picture from his hospital bed with the caption, "10 shots couldn't stop me." He got shot twice in the stomach, twice in the hand, 5 times in the butt, and once in the thigh. What's crazy is, he did so much dirt just in the past few months that he didn't even know who shot him. He eventually made a full recovery, but had to relearn how to walk. After the shooting, he caught a couple lucky breaks that helped further his career. While he was in the hospital, legendary producer Swiss Beats reached out to him and wanted to work. They collabed on the track The Bottom in 2012. He also dropped his 5th mixtape, Who Harder Than Me 2, later that year, which featured production from Swiss and guest appearances from another Philly legend, Freeway. Around the same time, AR App also attracted Birdman's attention, who wanted to sign him to Cash Money. But the deal wasn't exactly what he wanted, so he turned it down. That same year, AR App lost his grandmother and then his mother the following month. He described this as one of the most traumatic moments of his life, and it led him further down the wrong path. At the time, he was facing multiple charges for drugs and guns after getting involved in a huge drug trafficking ring a few years before. On April 13, 2013, he tweeted about how his past crimes caught up to him. A few days later, his videographer confirmed that AR Ab was turning himself into authorities. He was booked for a charge related to selling crack cocaine, which carried up to a 3-month sentence. But he was able to get the sentence reduced to 18 months after agreeing to participate in a boot camp program. He was then paroled in November 2014. After he got out, he got right back to making music and dropped a mixtape called Mud Music 2, followed by Who Harder Than Me 3. But instead of linking up with other rappers in the city, Ab got into a public beef with one of the biggest artists in the city, Meek Mill. The beef actually started with Drake, who name-dropped AR Ab on the Meek Mill diss track Back to Back, where he rapped, "I drove here in the Wraith playing AR Ab." Ab later addressed the bar in an interview with DJ Vlad, saying he wasn't signed to OVO, but he was disappointed in Meek's response track. After hearing the interview, Meek went on stage at a performance in Camden, New Jersey, and said, "F AR Ab" for siding with Drake over him. AR Ab clapped back with his own version of Back to Back, where he dissed Meek and threatened to send the shooters. Meek's cousin O'Malley then took shots at AR Ab with his own Back to Back freestyle. Ab responded by going on Vlad TV again and claiming that Meek was scared to diss him and that O'Malley was the softest out of all the Dream Chasers. Allegedly, there was also confrontations behind the scenes that resulted in violence. But Ab and Meek eventually squashed their beef in January 2016 after hopping on the phone and talking it out like men. AR Ab continued to grind and dropped back-to-back mixtapes throughout 2017 called Protocol Volume 1 through 4. But despite his obvious lyrical talent, AR Ab just couldn't escape the temptations of the streets and ended up getting caught up in a major indictment that led to a 45-year sentence. In October 2018, AR Ab and 8 other men were arrested and accused of running a massive drug trafficking ring throughout North Philly. His charges included conspiracy, possession, and distribution of cocaine, crack, methamphetamine, and heroin. He was accused of turning his record label, OBH, into a large drug-scale ring and obtaining several high-end properties throughout Philadelphia to protect the supply. He also accused him of ordering the murder of a competitor in 2017, but didn't actually charge him with that crime. During the trial, prosecutors used his own lyrics and posts on social media to prove that he not only committed the crimes, but bragged about them frequently. After his arrest, many fans went back and peeped how often AR Ab talked about his activities in interviews and on social media. Many assumed his drug dealing days were over since he was so open about his crimes. But it looks like he just thought he was untouchable and couldn't help but brag about his involvement. On November 19, 2019, AR Ab was found guilty of multiple counts of conspiracy and distribution of crack cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine in federal court. About 18 months later, he was officially sentenced to 45 years in prison and began his sentence at Allenwood Penitentiary in White Deer, Pennsylvania. AR Ab is another example of when being too real can go wrong. He had a lot of lyrical ability and could have taken over the rap game if he put his mind to it, but he couldn't escape the temptations of the drug game and it ended up costing him his freedom.